Hello, my name is Cassandra Burko, and I'm a senior psychology major, photography minor from the Economy.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Johnson. I am a junior psychology major from Chicago, Illinois.
Hello, my name is Imani Folks. I am a junior psychology major, sociology minor from Long Island, New York.
Hi, my name is Dominique Prothor. I'm a senior psychology major, sociology minor from St. Louis, Missouri.
Hi, my name is Majesty Jackson. I'm a sophomore health science major from Boston, Massachusetts.
So today we're going to be discussing the film The Five Bloods, directed by Spike Lee, and we're going to talk about the impact of war and its consequences.
Okay, so one thing I noticed about the music was it had very like heavy war music with like instruments, with like the saxophones, drums, and they were, very dramatic. And I noticed those are like key, music in the movie. And I also noticed like heavy music from the 70s from artists like Marvin Gaye, and how in each scene, like the music that they chose from him, I feel like it signified the scene and how they may have felt. Like a noticeable scene was when they were in the club dancing. They played Gotta Have It by Marvin Gaye. So yeah. Did y'all also notice like, like key scenes from the music in the movie?
Yeah, no, I just noticed a lot of war themed music going on at certain parts of the movie, of course.
Yeah.
One thing that stuck out to me was during the flashback scenes when they were in the jungle or in the war. I heard like strong horns, so that was specific to me. That stood out to me during those time periods. And then there was a lot of like throwback music to like 70s, 80s type music.
I also noticed like a lot of like instrumental, like orchestra scores just being played like throughout the movie.
And I think a big scene was one of the later war scenes when just the vocal part of What's Going On by Marvin Gaye played. It was definitely really reflective of that moment and how history sort of repeated itself in terms of the war and the war sort of, reoccurring in that same predicament. So I thought that was a big scene as well with the music.
Okay.
Yeah. Another thing I noticed from like the music is also like I feel like when choosing, I guess like choosing the music for the movie, I felt like they wanted to like focus more so on like, because I know like back then music in the 70s, like what it signified for Black people was, the best way like how to like I guess express their emotions. So like when they was picking like music from Marvin Gaye, I felt like they use his songs more so as like a turning point to, signify like how they felt when they was, um trying to find the gold and like different things that they was going through, like, when they was trying to find Norman and stuff. So yeah, I feel like they picked upon like the music that they chose and really like use it to turning points and like the climax in the movie.
So we can now move on to talking about like the actors and the casting that was chosen in the movie.
Yeah, I took a lot of notes on that. I definitely think that the personalities for all the characters were reflected really well in the casting. So Paul, he was a big personality. He was played by Delroy Lindo. And Paul was a really tough guy with a really present heart. And you could tell, especially in the war scenes, he had like clashes of different emotions because there was his PTSD that he was dealing with. And there was also like just combinations of anger, grief, and fear. Like he was trying to deal with the death of his, war buddy, war leader. And as an actor, it's really important to channel the story that you're trying to tell. And I think with the scenes that he was involved in, he like with his appearance, he has a strong build, and he has a piercing voice because like, in those scenes where it got like really tough, like when right after Eddie had died, it got really serious, and he has to be really strong and take up, that leadership role right there. And so when he's angry, it. When he's serious, it. And so I think that was really good casting for Paul. And I think just overall in general, the casting of the personalities was really good. Melvin, he was really funny, and he plays into that, round and friendly personality that, people know and love. And also Otis, he was more of, I don't know if any of you can speak to, more of his personality, but he seemed sort of neutral. But once he found out that he fathered a child in Vietnam, everything was just really like, heartfelt for him. And just overall, they all had their different stories that they were telling. But when it came down to fighting the war, they all had the same purpose. And so I think that was just really good to lay out throughout the film. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
I do, because the one thing that I did not like about the casting was the fact that like when they did the flashbacks, they still had the same present day actors, even though the past should represented their younger selves. I should not be seeing the same actor present day.
Yes.
Being the same person back then, that doesn't make sense. You should gradually age. No, that it was no.
Right? I'm like, it's like 40 years. Like,
exactly. Like,
at first, when I first seen the movie, I actually was like, okay, why did they have the same actors? But then, like thinking about it, I actually kind of like that because I feel like them having the same actors, it kind of builded more on their personalities. And so like we got to see them during, the flashbacks of how they were and like what were their emotions. And then like now in present time, like how they because they did kind of like grow, even though it was like, the same people like from different times. But I guess I feel like they did that on purpose to kind of like build more with the same actors and kind of like show the significance of basically how like during this time they were that way with like this mission, and they were led by Norman. Now this time they're trying to find the gold and find where he's buried and stuff. So I feel like it all kind of came together, even though like initially I was like, why they got the same actors?
I also just felt like it was just kind of like ironic, I guess, like having Chadwick Boseman play Norm. I feel like now, like since he's passed, it kind of made it like when you're watching it, you kind of like felt with them in a way because it felt like you're actually like looking for him. Like I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I get what you're saying.
okay, then the next thing is editing and camera work.
Okay, so are we gonna say something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say that there was a lot of Spielberg up in there.
Yeah.
Except for when it came to the daddy issues between the Morehouse son and his father, that was a lot right there because your son didn't you didn't have to hate your son like that, for real, for real. Because if it was up to me, you would not be my father no more. You going to sit here and keep telling me I'm a disgrace, you hate me, all this? No, you are not my father. So there was a lot of parental conflict going on, and then even still with the. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was it basically.
So pretty much what I found, well, like in the beginning, of course, they had like the clips of like the protests and like the war footage from the Vietnam War. So like pretty much any like protest that was going on in America. I like how they kind of like had a montage of like clips of people that had like died just fighting against the war. They had like different speeches, things like that. In the beginning, when they all meet up like at the airport or things at the hotel, I feel like the lighting was like really vibrant. And there was kind of like a lot of red, so I feel like they were kind of trying to go for like this like 70s, like 80s, like vibe, like something that was like still kind of old, but still current. Sorry, my neighborhood is like okay. They also had a lot of cut scenes from like past to present day, and I realized like for the past scenes, it was like very much like an old like war movie with the dramatic music, and then they all had like a grain filter to them just so you could tell that it was like a past clip. And yeah, I feel like they really dramatized like the scenes from when they were in the war fighting together. Um, I also noticed like they did a lot of comparison. So like for example, when Seppo had died, when he got killed with a landmine, and how they kind of compare that to they compare that and then like the fight that happens afterwards between the group and the Vietnam soldiers, and how they compared that to Paul when he had witnessed Norm's death or witnessed his death. Yeah, I feel like they did a lot of back and forth with that. And then another like kind of interesting theme was when like David had like went to Vietnam just to see like what his father was up to. And I thought it was kind of funny how like that scene where they're like all like looking down at him, and then it was like the camera was like pointing like this, and he's just standing there like holding a drink, and they're all like, "You're not getting any of this money." Like I don't know what you think is going on, but I think like another big part was I guess Paul kind of starts to deteriorate, and when he was talking to himself, and how the camera was like pointed right at him, it was like he was talking to us almost.
Yes, that was a very powerful scene right there. Because I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, he must be talking to like somebody or something out there in the wild. But him talking directly to me in the camera, I was like, Paul, you are not my favorite character right now.
Yeah, it was like really intense, especially because it was like silent. He was just really talking to us. I was like, okay.
But then what I will also say about what the editing, what I had noticed was that like at the beginning, some of the cuts were very harsh from scene to scene. Like from when they were at the hotel and then they ended up being at the nightclub. Where's the transition?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But I did like at the end, it was a smoother transition when they showed how the money was divided out.
yeah, because like, yeah, that was confusing because I'm like, okay, how did this happen? Like, where did this go? Because like when they kept like going like flashback to like present time, yeah, like I agree with you. In the beginning, it was just not flowing at all. I was just like, I was like, okay, what's going on? Because I was a little confused when I had first seen this movie. Because I was like, okay, I know, like when I was started watching more, I'm like, okay, Norman, you know, he's not with them anymore. Especially when they started like going to like the present scene in the flashbacks. But yeah, I agree, it was very harsh.
Yeah, let me add on to that, saying that I was confused too. Like again with the actors thing, because they didn't choose different actors for the past. I feel like the only time I was able to like realize that they were going to past because it did get like grainier, and I feel like the colors are more saturated, so you can kind of tell. And then like the music would change, like again, like I would hear like the horns and then the jungle and stuff like that. But that part of the editing I liked. It was just like the actor thing was confusing because then I had to like figure out how long ago it was from when they left the war or how long it is from when they like reconnected. It was a lot. Like that part kind of irked my nerves a little bit. Like I had to go back to certain parts and like rewatch it. I was like, okay, now I know because I watched the whole movie. But yeah, and I wanted to say something else about like, the opening part. The part that stuck with me was that the whole movie opened up with Muhammad Ali, and he was sharing his feelings about the about just black men fighting in the Vietnam War. And he was just like basically saying like why. He was like, they're not the black man's enemy. They don't call me this. They don't do this to me. Why am I fighting their war? Why am I fighting them? And that part was really interesting, and I kept thinking about that part throughout the movie because I feel like they would call back to it a couple of times. So yeah, I like that. I feel like that was very good.
The only other part that I like noted about the editing was the part where Paul finally like gets to talk to Norm, and I noticed like the lighting got like significantly like paler, and so at that point I couldn't tell if like Paul had maybe like finally died or something, even though that was like right before he ends up being killed. But when they finally like reveal, I guess why like Paul was so like strung out about the whole situation, and we kind of figure out like where his guilt kind of stems from. But yeah, I noticed like the lighting was like kind of pale. It was like pink kind of, so maybe like a heavenly kind of essence like, came along with that.
Yeah, I definitely noticed in that scene when they hugged and you could see Norman's face, the sun was like right there, like shining on the side of his face. And I thought that was really, heavenly, like you said.
Yeah, we can move on to script.
Okay, a noticeable, like, I guess you could say, quote from the movie or like the script or whatever is when Norman was talking about I basically when they was, I guess they were like figuring out what, like how they were gonna bury it. And he basically was just saying something, about basically how, black people, like we died for this red, white, and blue. And how he was just saying, like, we've been dying for this country from the very get, hoping one day they'll give us our rightful place. All they gave us was a foot up our black AIDS. And I felt like that part was just very significant because I felt like that kind of, I feel like it kind of signified all black people's feelings towards, the United States as a whole, and just like how we do so much and, we still don't really get the basic rights and respects, and how we have to, just fight so hard. And in the movie, they were in the Vietnam War and they went through so much as black men, they weren't even, accepted. So yeah, that was very stand out to me, that line in the movie.
Yeah, I was about to say like that part of the script I feel like it was very interesting because I feel like it's something being said during the Vietnam War, but it's something that I feel like all African Americans or Black people can just relate to. Like even right now, like you just feel like you need that sense of reparations or that sense of equity or just taking back or getting back what is supposed to belong to you. So that speech was really good. And then he like brought up like I forgot his name, Milton Olive or Caprice Attucks from the Boston Massacre, and he was just like saying like this goes back far, like far beyond us, like this has been happening. And I think it sets the tone for like why it was so important for them to go back in the first place. Like this is what Norman, our leader, was saying to us, is what he was teaching us. And we go back home and we basically live that out. And now we're gonna go back here and just do what we set out to do. So I really like that part of the movie or the script.
One thing I will say about the script is with Paul's character, I noticed that like with his dialogue, he like sometimes will bully people and make certain comments about them, and then because he makes certain negative comments about them, it ends up making the whole group end up ganging up on that one person, and he basically done that throughout the whole movie. When it came to Otis and his pills, but for his hip, when it came to when Heidi and them, and he made everyone tie them up, like no one made you leader. Yeah. And how they were like, you guys are going to let my son be in it and you're going to give him a cut. He was very demanding. I did not like that.
Yeah, and I like how they made that clear too, like from jump. Like you could tell, like, okay, Paul's gonna be that guy. Like every part of his like script, you would be like, oh my God, you're gonna be this person in this situation. And he just kept like escalating throughout the movie. So low key, I kind of like that part. I didn't like that they didn't like change him. Like I thought at the end it was gonna make him be like the hero, and I'm like, no, he needs to be this like bad guy or whatever he is, because then I feel like that goes back to he's the person who I don't know how to say it. Like he's the person that like you would think of, or you wouldn't think of, or you wouldn't notice from after the war. Like this is all the war. Everything that happened to him is just showing you from jump. Like this is what this war did to him. It changed him and the people that he lost. You could see that all in how he acts and how he treats other people. So I really like that part.
Yeah, I really like that you said that, because yeah, that war, you can definitely tell like from the script that it changed all of them, like their mindset. And I feel like Norman, he really played a part on like influencing them as well, because like the stuff that he was saying, you could tell like his character, like he stood up for what he believed in, like he knew himself, like he was basically all what he endured in the war, like he just felt like the United States owed him something, and the goal was basically their reparations. So I felt like with all of that, and them meeting Norman, I felt like that definitely like shaped them and how their mindset was, and like just some of their actions. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you said.
I feel like
sorry. I was gonna say there was this part in his monologue when he said, I don't know if I can say the word. He was like, I'm not getting F with salt in the Vaseline again. And then he kind of spoke on, I believe he might have had cancer, unless he was just saying like a metaphor, but he was like, the war made him malignant with like, and he got like a type of lymphoma from Agent Orange. And I looked up what Agent Orange was, and it was it's a toxic like bio agent that they would use in wars. So that added on to like his anger and his hatred for just being back in that place too, like back in that jungle, that just at this point just made him sick. And he was talking about how he's gonna choose when and where he wants to die out. And like him saying that to the camera was kind of crazy, especially like when he, at this point, I think he's getting chased like through the jungle now, like by those 4 other guys trying to go. So it's kind of crazy hearing him say like, oh, nobody's gonna hurt me no more. He's like, I'm gonna take my gold, I'm gonna go home, and I'll be better than anything. He was like, forget those people, forget my son turned against me. So that part of his monologue, I'm not gonna get F with salt in the Vaseline, was very impactful as well.
And I was just gonna mention the like, during the flashbacks when they played the clips of Hanoi Hannah and her radio recording, like speaking to the Black soldiers, and I just thought it was kind of interesting how like even as they were like hearing all that stuff, they didn't really want to like believe it. Like at that point in time, that they were like fighting a war that really didn't make sense, because like I think Norm was the main one that was trying to tell them like we still have like a job to do at the end of the day. But I don't know, I just thought it was kind of interesting.
I think another point for Paul was his use of spirituals and scriptures throughout the movie. I think when he left the group, he was quoting the 23rd Psalm. And I also know, like, right before they shot him, when he died, he was singing a spiritual, and he was saying, I don't remember the exact song or the words, but I just know that he was saying, like, oh, like, we'll get to heaven, and we'll redeem all our sins. And that was the last thing he said before they shot him. And I just think it was just a big testament to his character, because, like, he was, he had gone through a lot, but I think when it came down to those big tough moments, he sort of had no choice but to reflect for himself and to sing and to connect with that, I guess, spiritual part of him that wasn't connected. Well, I mean, it ultimately was connected to the war he was fighting in, but it was sort of something that took him out of the anger and the tough part that was going on in the real world.
Yeah, I feel like the way they really played upon Paul's character, and just like how you know, Lindo like really, portrayed him. Like you could really tell like in his actions and in just the whole movie, like how he really, struggled, especially like the stuff that he was saying, like how he really struggled with like his overall like grief and, trauma, I guess, of like losing like Norman, and just like overall, like, I guess you could say like how he felt about being back in that setting. So yeah, from like the script, just the way the things were portrayed, I feel like that was just we was able to, just like really see that immensely from his character.
So finally, you can talk about the overall like psychological impact of the film.
I feel like there were so many psychological impacts, and it's from different points as well. Like, if we just take the five bloods, like the five main characters in general, between them, like already four of them, they're already feeling some sense of loss because they lost Storm and Norman in the war. Now coming back to Vietnam, that brings up all the emotions that they had and all their, can kind of see their what's the word I'm looking for? Anti-Asian hate with Paul as well. Um, yeah, and then by also seeing Eddie get blown up with the landmine, that also interferes with their mindset because, all right, lost one partner. I'm sitting here losing another one. Like, but I watched him die in front of my eyes. I watched something so terrible happen. Like he stepped on a landmine. I watched him. That right there in itself, that's a lot to take in right there. So they definitely put in a lot of psychological impact on purpose for this movie. So you can be, even still, I feel like to even feel what they feel like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely think, the way they portrayed it, like the point of view, I think since we talked about Paul so much, I think we could say that a lot of it was given sort of from his point of view, just because, like there were scenes like it was going through the water and then it goes up and then there's Norman standing there. I think that was one of the later scenes when he talked to him towards the end. I sort of lost my train of thought. But yeah, it was a lot of connections and sort of seeing that PTSD. I think just seeing how they revisited it, and we sort of see how they feel like, oh, this is where we fought like about 40 years ago, and now we're back here and trying to, they were seeking the gold and they were trying to find Norman as well. And so it tried to seem like a nice trip at the beginning. Like it was trying to, like at the beginning, it seemed pretty cool, but once they got to the mission, it was like, okay, this is serious. And I think the more things that happened and the more obstacles that happened, it was more, it felt closer to the actual wartime. And so it definitely became, a little tougher to watch. It got violent. And yeah, I think that was a big psychological connection right there.
One thing I noticed from the psychological impact was basically how we kind of like got to, be in the shoes and like get a different perspective of basically how Black soldiers felt in that time and how it impacts them like present day, because I feel like they were just used, for just like extras. They wasn't really like put in the forefront or really like seen as essential people, because like most of the time, they were just in the war, they were dying, they really wasn't able to get as much attention or that type of like praise as like white soldiers were, because back then Black people, we really didn't have like rights, and we really wasn't viewed as important as our counterparts. So like the way the war really took a toll on them, and like we got to really see, especially with Paul, like how Vanessa said, like PTSD, like you could tell Paul like had a lot of grief, a lot of anxiety, just like how he would be just so I guess you could say like the way his character was just always so angry or just conflicted. You could tell that had something to do with the war, and I guess like the way those traits manifested on like Black men, if I guess you could say like it brought on more like a generational type of curse and like trauma. So I feel like, yeah, the psychological impact of that is just the being in a war was just very taxing on Black men and just Black people in general. So we got to see that with this movie, and just how it impacted the 5 men in different ways.
Yeah, adding on to that, I was gonna say that like at times I feel like it was uncomfortable to watch just a little bit, but then I had to remember that was a movie. But then circling back around, like it's a movie with very real undertones and like a very real base. So I thought that that was kind of frustrating to just like come to terms with, and then thinking like I'm just watching a movie. Like there are people out here who are grown men who are just dealing with this type of stuff and can't even talk about it. So I feel like it was a very explicit showing of what they experienced, because I don't feel like you hear about it, you hear about what PTSD can do, and you hear about like the VA and how they have like counseling sessions and stuff like that. But then like just, and they shot it very explicitly, like parts I was just like, oh wow, they're showing this right now in a movie. It was very crazy how like you have to go to that and then just go home and you're expected to just work a 9 to 5 job and just carry on with life. So I thought that part was very well did for what it made me do, like feel as a viewer, and what it's making like us talk about right now. So yeah, but that was very impactful.
I think even with the montage in the beginning where they show like actual clips from like the Vietnam War and like the things surrounding it, because like for example, like the clip with the monk when he lit himself on fire, like I remember seeing that picture back in high school, but I didn't really know that there was like a video, there's video footage of that happening, and even the part where the man is getting shot by the cop too. It was just like a lot of stuff was kind of like jarring, but I guess they had to show like in a video form so that you kind of know, I guess like it just you have more sense of like what the war was and like how like violent it really was.
And I guess it can also show to show us that yes, it happened a long time ago, but it did not happen that long ago. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of men who were war veterans who had to deal with the type of stuff that these men in the 5 Lets had to deal with. Like, don't let me get his name wrong. Hold on. Like Otis having his daughter. A lot of men probably had to go through that and not even know about their daughter or son or whatever the case may be, because they were hated in Vietnam and in the Asian countries. You know what I'm saying? So that can also play a role too, to show it's not that far back as we think it is.
I guess another thing was like, I guess like the father-son relationship between Paul and David was a big one. We got to see a lot of the tension that was there, and we don't really get to really know like the reason behind it until Paul had already pretty much like disowned David. We can kind of see like it's a mixture of like grief as well with Paul losing his wife like during David's birth, and so it's kind of like him, I guess, like not really reconciling with it and like looking for someone to blame. So just like throughout David's life, he's probably like just hated him, and even with this whole situation, it just gave him more reason to dislike him. But then even with that, still like David was still kind of trying to like reach out for his father. Like he could see that he was starting to deteriorate. And so that's why he even went on the trip in the first place. But he didn't even feel like that comfortable with him, like being back in Vietnam, knowing how he was mentally.
But even so, then he should not resent his son the way that he did. Like that resentment was too much. And you tell me you did this all his life, and he's still here to care for you. That shows that your son loves you unconditionally, no matter, even though you despised him for something that he had no control over. But you could have had a control over the situation when you could have said, you know how doctors be, who do you want to save? The wife or the baby? Like, do not, like, your son is innocent in this whole situation. Do not sit here and take your anger out on him. You had PTSD. Cool. Not cool, but like, you could have managed it and dealt with it in a way. It's easy, everything's easier said than done, but you know what I'm saying. You did not have to resent your child like that at all.
Yeah, the way he resented him, it was just his character. Like I keep talking about his character because I feel like out of all of the people, like, you know, all of the men, like his character was really like the way his character was written, you can really see the, you know, the psychological everything, like the trauma and everything, and the way he treated him. I felt like he was almost kind of like, in a way, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like he was almost kind of in a way, not more so like mad, but I think it was just from like the, like his whole personality and everything. I feel like I'm really trying to figure out the word. I guess I could say he was kind of like in a way, maybe more so like, I wouldn't want to say mad at himself, but like kind of like similar, that's kind of like similar to what I'm trying to say, because like he had this son, they have a you know, a distant relationship, and he still hasn't, you know, really came to terms with himself and all what he has to endure. And so I feel like that's just what made him just have this such hatred for his son and just everything. Like it was really like his character, like you could really see the, you know, the psychological impact with his character, because it was like it was really written good, but yeah, his character was it was a lot of work with him.
Yeah, and with that relationship too, I kind of didn't know how mad to be at Paul, because you could see that he hated his son, but I feel like he loved him too. He just didn't know how to show it properly or at all. Like I think the part where I forgot his son's name, he was on the bomb or the pressure thing, and when he was just like talking to him, he was like, "Where do you go?" He's like, "The house." Like you could tell that there was something that they always did, like them too, because what he knew what to say and they knew what to do. And that part was, I love that part a lot. Like that was the part I thought he was just like gonna stop cussing out his son, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't, but that part I like that part. And then at the end, when you find out like why he doesn't really like mess with his son like that, is because the mom says. That part was saddening me, because I'm just like, damn, like you just went through basically this whole thing together, and you still just gonna treat him like that. It was very difficult, because like it's hard to be mad at him, because I know it's not entirely his fault. Like he has stuff that he just hasn't dealt with, or stuff that he hasn't talked about, including the death of his wife. So just that too, and then just not having anybody to help raise his son with, and you just have to deal with that alone, basically. So that relationship was kind of tricky for me. Like, I didn't know how mad I should be at Paul Ellis, just like not showing his son the love that he needed to show him.
I guess we missed categories. So we can go back to talking about the settings and the costumes used in the movie.
So the setting was basically present day Vietnam and then the jungle area of where they were back in the day. And then even still with the setting, you can say America too, when at the end when they were dispersing the money that they have found. And so also taking the fact the actual Vietnam War that happened, they had showed the actual flashback of that too, for them at least in the movie. So there was that.
I feel like in terms of the costumes, like all the Five Bloods, they kind of like the way they dress kind of reflected on their personalities in a way. Like in the very beginning, they kind of just dressed like they were going on vacation. But I feel like with Paul, he kind of just like I feel like he dressed like how you would expect a veteran to dress. Like I don't know if that makes sense. Like he had like a bandana, and then like him wearing like the Trump hat like throughout the whole movie. That was interesting to say the least. And then like David wearing his like Morehouse gear throughout everything, just things like that.
I love the fact David wore his Morehouse shirt. I hate the fact that I got real right dirty now. But definitely was type of representation for HBCU Pride because, you know, we don't get a lot of representation at all. So it was good to see at least one of our HBCUs on the big screen like that.
And I think Spike Lee went to Morehouse also. So I think that's probably why he's like, yeah, let me just throw this in here.
Yeah, if this was a Spike Lee movie, he definitely was gonna have the HBCU representation, especially like with all his old movies, like Do the Right Thing and School Days too, is definitely HBCU tribute somewhere.
But I do agree with you that all their costumes, even in the present day, I feel like they do represent the type of person that they were. Like, for example, we can take the rich one, Eddie. Like, even though he was not rich, he was the nicest dressed out of all of them. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely do think that the outfits that they wore definitely represented who their personality was as a character, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And the settings, I really liked how the settings, because I feel like the settings was definitely like added to more like to the, you know, the whole overall story in the script. Like it kind of it matched with it. You know, like how some movies like what they're trying to like portray like the setting and it kind of like don't really go well with the whole overall, you know, flow of the movie, or it just seemed like it's just, you know, too fake, or you can tell they're using like a green screen. I feel like the way that they put the settings when they were, you know, trying to find the gold and trying to find them when they was in like, you know, in Vietnam in the present and even in the past, like I feel like it all flowed and really looked really nice together as a whole. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I agree with y'all saying like how the costumes kind of, you know, reflected their personalities. And it was just like seeing Paul with the MAGA hat and then how he was just like he voted for Trump. Like that was that part right there. That was like okay, like that really just his character, like I said, his character was just it was really good written, but like yeah, his character, yeah. But like adding that, I guess that kind of like I don't know, I guess they gave I don't know what they gave, but yeah, I agree with y'all.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I think overall, Spike Lee did a good job kind of like portraying like different consequences of war, like the PTSD, just like mental battles, and then just being conflicted with like if you're doing the right thing or not, like the reason behind like what you're doing in terms of like having Black people fight in this war, and then even like going back home and people like protesting it the whole time, and the whole time you're like focused on your mission, but then back at home, people don't even like what you're doing, and then you go home and then are greeted with people like disliking you. Yeah, I feel like the movie just touched on a lot. Yeah.
Overall, I really did enjoy the movie. I felt like all the like the key points and everything that they covered in the film, I feel like it was just like a great way to, just tell the story of like how many like Black men that fought in that war that, aren't able to, tell their story. And just like how these 5 men, like how, what they endured, and then just like how Norman, like he was just, even though he wasn't, alive, but in the flashbacks, how he was like a forefront of the character. I feel like that really signified a lot for like, Black men and just Black people in general. So I really feel like Spike Lee, he really did a good job with writing this, and just telling, their story, and just putting like key points of just, the everyday struggle and story of Black people